Hello, I am Matt Williamson. How is everyone doing? I am great. I'm in good spirits. Week 1 for the Steelers is in the books, real live football, and I thought that was a simply outstanding win. I thought it was a great group effort on both sides of the ball, especially the defense was dominant. I think the coaching staff deserves a lot of credit. And frankly, I think the Steelers were clearly the better team. And I think Atlanta's a pretty decent franchise right now. And I'll be honest, I didn't have great vibes going into that game. I mean, the O-line injuries, the Russell Wilson stuff, where's the firepower going to come from? Didn't feel great about it. Atlanta was healthy and didn't play their guys, maybe to their detriment, who knows, in the preseason. But phenomenal win. Here's what we're going to do. I just have it laid out this way. I want to go over the halftime stats a little bit. I want to go over the final stats a little bit. And then I want to go over my observations a lot. So at the half, Fields was 11 for 13 for 83 yards, 5 for 26 on the ground. At that point, Cousins was 13 for 18 for 136, but a pick and a touchdown. Yards per play, though, Atlanta was at 6-0. Steelers were at 4-6 at the half. Steelers did have 49 rushing yards, and that included a minus 10-yard carry by Pickens. It was that really goofy one. Atlanta had 39 yards. Steelers had 83 passing yards, 136 for Atlanta. Dejan, I thought, looked a lot better in this game and was a lot bigger problem than his stats indicate. But at the half, he had 10 carries for 26 and 5 catches for 43. Pickens, more on these guys later, of course. 5 for 45. On third downs, Atlanta was only 2 for 4. Steelers were 5 for 6. Falcons didn't have a penalty, and that went well into the third quarter. More on that later, too. Steelers were 4 for 25 penalty-wise, but the Steelers were better in time of possession, 16-17 as opposed to 13-43. And at this time, too, there were several huge plays called back. That Pickens, quote, push-off, the Watt, quote, offsides. Ugh. All right, final stats. And some of the stuff that just stood out to me. Fields, 17 of 23 for 156, 14 for 57 on the ground. And I think they were a little worried about him. I know he ran 14 times, but they didn't design a ton of quarterback powers and things like that. I retweeted this or tweeted it or whatever, but if you go look at the next gen stats, he didn't even attempt one pass between the numbers. 0. I mean, they have really good safeties, and he didn't have to. The Steelers were controlling the game. So to me, that's good coaching, but unsustainable. Cousins ended up 16 to 26, but for only 155 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, and I thought he played pretty poorly, to be honest with you. Steelers had a lot to do with that. When it was all on, I thought a lot of it was on his own, but Dejan only ended up with 68 rushing yards on 18 carries and 5 for 43 as a receiving threat. I thought he was really, really good. And I thought London versus Pickens was really interesting too, because those guys mostly drew Porter and Terrell. Pickens ended up 6 for 85. London only 2 for 15. Only 2 catches for Drake London. That's well done. The penalties. Atlanta ended up with 5 for 34, and the Steelers only ended up with 9 for 60, but it seemed so much more lopsided in Atlanta's favor. I mean, in there to help them. I'm not saying they're trying to throw the game for Atlanta, but just because of the situation, the magnitude of the penalties, I really think that this game could have got, not out of hand, but been in control much earlier if those goes different ways. Steelers end up controlling the clock for 35-36 as opposed to 24-24 for Atlanta. Love that. Yards per play was still only 4-1 for the Steelers, but it was consistent. Atlanta was 4-5. Rushing yards was 137 versus 89 for the Falcons. And passing yards was about equal, 133 to 137. Third downs, this was huge. Now, the Steelers were stymied on a fourth down. And we could talk about that to no end. And there's definitely some Monday morning quarterbacking here. But you would have gone up by 8. And I always tell you, not getting a fourth down conversion is exactly like a turnover, and that was acted just like a turnover and gave the Falcons life. So they were 0 for 1 on fourth. Atlanta was 1 for 1 on fourth. But Atlanta was only 2 for 9 on third downs, and we're in a lot of third and longs. That was well done. Where Steelers were 8 for 17 on third downs. It's pretty good. You don't want to get to third downs that often, 17 times, but you're hitting about 50%. That's pretty darn good. They won the turnover battle 3-0, but I will always count that fourth down conversion as a turnover for the Steelers that the Steelers didn't get. So those are the stats. This episode is brought to you by BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. From the NFL to college, BetOnline is every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. If you think you know your stuff, get in on the winner-take-all $300,000 survivor pool for NFL. When the game's over, head over to the online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of over 150 slot games. Head to the website today and use the promo code BELIEVE, B-L-E-A-V, all caps. Bet online, the game starts here. I thought Fields played well. He wasn't a dynamic runner. He wasn't a great passer. But I don't mean this as an insult, in Pickett-like manner, executed the way they wanted him to, didn't put the team in harm's way, but had more ability and flashed more big plays than those type of guys. I thought he played well considering the circumstances on the road, new offense, new environment, a lot of guys he hasn't played with before, but he's also got a lot of reps and practice and whatnot. So thumbs up for sure for Fields. I find it interesting, funny that didn't even have one pass attempt between the numbers. I'm sure that was intentional. Now, that goofy negative 10-yard rushing attempt, I thought Pickens basically looked like a star and looked like a one and was schemed up like we thought in the preseason. Very promising. And Terrell's a really good player. I'll have to go back and see how often they clashed, but it seemed like a lot, and Pickens more than held his own. Congrats to Arthur Smith. Maybe you guys didn't like the hire. Maybe it won't work out. But to go back and beat the team that just let you go and not even have your top quarterback and scheme things up. And I hope you guys just saw how much different the offense looks than last year. I mean, a lot of unbalanced stuff, a lot of power, a lot of different stuff that looks the same. But I thought it was a really well done job overall. Play calling, preparation, use of personnel by Coach Smith. That was great. Najee didn't end up with huge games or huge numbers, but I thought he got stronger as the game went on. Workhorse, Warren, obviously, they did not want to use the full capacity. Patterson got out there a little, but he handled the heavy lifting, as he usually and pretty much always does. Great work by Najee, big contributor. This young offensive line did pretty well. Yeah, I mean, haven't studied each and every one of them. This, again, I always record these Sunday night between the 4 o'clock games and the Sunday nighter. But I thought the young O-line, Anderson got beat here and there. And Jarrett got him for one, But I thought the young O-line exceeded my expectations. It's a really good first step for that group. No question in my mind. But overall, very encouraging offensive day. They didn't score. They're 0 for 2 in the red zone. They did not get in the end zone. I don't think that Tomlin was pushing the envelope because he realized how much of a struggle it was for Atlanta to move the football, especially as the game went on, because the Steeler D was pretty freaking awesome. But I thought this was a B performance for the offense, and all things considered and situationally maybe even better if you weighed it for what they had to deal with and all that good stuff. So, well done. Played a good game, physical, something to build off on that side of the ball. TJ Watt was insane in this game. I mean, no one in the league in week one had a better game at any position on any team than TJ Watt. He was that good, and his stat line doesn't come close to showing his impact. And I do think he was robbed on that penalty that would have been a game-changing play. And how fitting was it that he finished this game off with a sack? He was unreal, and they still were able to rotate him in and out. I'm curious what his snap counts will look like. We'll definitely go over that tomorrow. But wow, I mean, like, all-time great player, one of the best games I've ever seen from him. I mean, if that's what we're going to see this year, look out. I mean, that was really, really good. And the D as a whole, I thought, was phenomenal against a very talented offense that doesn't have a lot of holes. Really impressive. They had no answer for the Steelers' pass rush. And a big key that we talked about was, what's Atlanta going to do for their fifth skill guy? Do they want to put out a blocking tight end? And they did that a lot, but isn't much of a, overall player. Or do they want to put Ray McCloud out as their fifth guy and then really struggle with pass blocking? I mean, asking like Pitts to chip Watt was a joke, so that was a good matchup for the Steelers that way. But because the big guys, it didn't hurt them all that bad. Bijan, Pitts, London, they looked good. They did some good things. Not really London, but anyway, the defense as a whole, I thought, was phenomenal and no answer for the pass rush. I want to give credit to the secondary as well. Porter shut down London, basically. Jackson made a big play and was never really picked on. Elliott showed up huge, and was really useful in this game, as was Minka. I thought Peyton Wilson and Queen speed on the second level was obvious, and something that's been lacking for years and was really encouraging. I'm not trying to get crazy here, but I think the Steelers could have the best defense in the league this year. I've thought that for a month or so, but I don't think that's unattainable. How about Chris Boswell? I mean, talk about best in the league. He was unbelievable. I mean, I was scared and would not have tried the 57-yarder to begin it. Because if he misses that one, I think that game goes totally different. Because you give the ball to him at midfield, and you're on your heels before you know it. And he nails it, as he did with every kick. Then he had to punt, and was fine. I thought that was going to be a critical mess, and it wasn't at all. Obviously, the biggest negative of this game, at least to my knowledge so far, is it looks like the punter, Johnston, is going to be out a long time. I mean, I don't know what the diagnosis is. You probably do by the time you hear this, but that looks like a broken leg. All indications Sunday night are it's bad, and I really was excited to see what he could do all year. But punters are replaceable. I mean, it's a shame because he's getting paid a lot, and I think he's going to be worth more than that, and he won't be replaced with somebody close to what he can bring. But Johnston's injury is a bummer. Another thing that wasn't great special teams-wise was we had another penalty on a return. That can't be a common theme. The Gunners looked like a problem. Skournick and Rush were the Gunners more often than not, at least from what I saw. Maybe I think every time. Didn't make plays. So punt coverage worries me, especially if your punter gets noticeably worse and the hang time's a little worse, things like that. Kind of mentioned this before with Arthur Smith, but man, a lot of different personnel changes on offense, using a lot of different guys, a lot of different combinations. A lot of times in 12 personnel, Freiermuth's not even out there. Cordell Patterson gets in the game. Pruitt plays a lot. I think that's something you get used to. I think that's going to be a Arthur Smith trend, and he got criticized for that in Atlanta. Somewhat rightfully so, sometimes not. But they're going to use a lot of people, and it's early in the year, and they didn't fatigue any of them. I mean, that's a big thing for me, especially to go to Denver next week. Like, fatigue is a big thing. I said this earlier, but I thought Bijan Robinson looked incredible. I mean, these are just some random notes here to wrap up the pod. I thought he's an incredible football player and could have been a lot worse. Steelers limited the damage he did. A lot of designed rollouts from Fields, both left and right. which contributes to why he didn't throw in the middle of the field, of course. A lot of it off play action, but that played to his strength. That kept him under wraps instead of sitting in the pocket and holding the ball and taking sacks like he has in his career. They got him on the move, make a decision. If not, scramble for 3. Smart. Again, is that super sustainable? Not if you're going to play 17 games that way, but to win a game right off the bat, yeah. Or to beat Denver, sure. Fields and or the offense as a whole had way more procedural issues, I'll say. Alignments, kind of some wasted timeouts, another fumbled snap. Certainly that 4th and 1. I need to go rewatch that 10 times, but it looked like that was just a mess from the start because I'm not even sure the linemen are ready to block, and I assume that has to be on Fields, but we can find out more about that. That wasn't pretty. You would think that's something that you won't see from Wilson. The Steelers defense, though, just dominated drive after drive, and they just took over the second half. There was some garbage yardage at the end, but for the most part, they gave up like 50 yards, meaningful yards, in the second half on the road against Kirk Cousins, Pitts, Bijan, London, and a good O-line. It's really something. As for Cousins, I do think the Steelers got him at a good time. He never really looked comfortable. I don't think he trusted his protection, nor should he. I think he and the offensive play caller, who's new at that too, did not trust the drop back passing game at all or any long developing routes. Cousins probably should have thrown 3 interceptions in this game, and there was balls he should have eaten that he threw and shouldn't have, or ugly passes just to get out of the situation. Also a tough day for one of the best guards in the league, Chris Lindstrom. He was getting beat, and then he got injured, and then he came back in and got beat more. So, great. That Steeler front is nasty. You're beating up on Chris Lindstrom. That is something to be said. Again, the ref stuff was not great, but we don't have to complain or cry about it because the Steelers lost. Or won, I'm sorry. I think the game could have gone a lot different if those would have at least gone the critical calls. The Najee face mask, the Pickens push off, the Watt strip sack in particular. None of them went the Steelers' way. They overcame it. Great, but it was a little one-sided referee-wise. Very much so. And as great as this was, the Ravens lose on Thursday night, and kind of a heartbreaker if you're them. The Bengals lost to what I thought was the worst team in the league. I did power ranks a couple days ago and had the Patriots last. And New England was the better team from what I saw. I'll rewatch that game this week too, but Bengals lost to New England. That was the most popular Survivor Bowl pick of the week. Biggest upset of the week for sure. They were the biggest favorites of the week. And the Browns, they got demolished. Dallas destroyed the Browns. Browns fans turning on them. That's getting ugly in Cleveland. The Watson stuff is bad. He's horrible. They have so much money invested in him. And right now they don't have any offensive tackles. Their 2 starters were out for this game. And then, I need to double check this, but Dwad Jones didn't finish the game. I don't know if he got benched or if he got hurt as well. But that's not the only reason they lost. I think the Browns D is fine, but they were always on the field and just getting abused. So Steelers, after 1 week, stand alone in the AFC North and have something to build off here. Great stuff. Was it perfect? Of course not. And some of it wasn't pretty, but you guys got to be used to that by now. A lot of this team isn't always pretty. They've been really good on the road lately. They've been really good in the fourth quarter lately. I'm talking about last year, over the last stretch here. Really good in 1-score games lately. It's the way they play, and if this defense plays like this, they're going to be in every game. All right, guys, I'm going to dig in more. I'll have a lot more stuff. Definitely snap counts for you tomorrow as well. Take care.